Hello and welcome to PPAG Perspectives, where members of our team will give key insights into very timely topics. My name is Norris Clark. I'm managing partner of Princeton Strategic Communications, and I'll be your host. Our topic today is the future of cannabis in the state of New Jersey. And with me are three members of our PPAG team who are experts on this topic. I'd like to introduce Regina Apollon, Sam Weinstein, and Kevin Hagan. So Regina, the first question goes out to you. How do you see the future of cannabis playing out in New Jersey?
Thank you, Norris. This is an exciting time for our state. We're seeing a new industry emerge that will bring numerous jobs and potentially billions of dollars in revenue to our economy on the state level down to the municipalities. New Jersey's in a great position to have a robust adult use cannabis market, not only with the actual plant, but with the ancillary businesses surrounding the industry. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission members have all been announced and had their first meeting to start the process of creating these regulations and laying the framework for the applications in these next coming months. As we continue to monitor their activity, companies and individuals should look to Princeton Public Affairs Group for guidance, as we've been involved from the very beginning with medicinal cannabis, assisting with both rounds of applications, with site locations, and building those local relationships that will help develop a successful application.
So Regina, what are we looking at in terms of legislation?
Any new industry, we can expect some changes throughout. One of the biggest things advocates have been very vocal about is having some type of home grow provision in the law. The legislature has, sort of heeded that advice and have introduced pieces of legislation to help address this. There are currently two bills. One is being sponsored by Senator Singleton that would allow medicinal patients and their caregivers to grow up to 4 mature and then 4 immature plants after registering as a home cultivator with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. And then there's another bill that's being sponsored by Senator Gopal that would allow for home cultivation of 6 cannabis plants for personal use and then up to 10 for medicinal use. And out of all the states that have some sort of medicinal cannabis program, at least half of them allow for home cultivation. Both of these bills and their companions are awaiting committee action, and we'll see if the legislature decides to, progress them. And so these are something that we'll have to pay attention to these next couple of months.
Thank you, Regina. Kevin, what's your take on home grow legislation?
I think it's important to take into consideration for the home grow is that we're talking about creating a new economic engine in the state. And from a retailer perspective, I believe it's important for us to allow that marketplace to mature. So early on, home grow sounds like a great idea, but the negative impacts and potential impacts to that marketplace could be significant. As we've seen in other states, Colorado being the most prominent, the home grow marketplace creates somewhat of a new illegal marketplace and has the potential to do so in New Jersey. So I think we've got to look at these new bills coming to the forefront with a bit of caution and allow the commission to set forth their rules and regulations prior to expanding the use both for medicinal and adult cannabis in the state.
So Sam, this is an entire new business. It's a new economy for New Jersey. And the businesses that are getting into this, I'm sure, are very interested in the tax structure that will apply. What's your view?
New Jersey, set one of the lowest tax rates for the cannabis industry in the country, which is at a level even to our sales tax, so 6.625%. And it also permits municipalities to have the option to impose a 2% tax on any cannabis business in their locality. When looking at our neighboring states, primarily New York, who's right next door to us, who passed their legislation towards the end of March, they enacted a 13% fee with 9% going to the government and another 4% returning to municipalities. When you kind of look around the nation, New Jersey, as I mentioned previously, set one of the lowest tax rates. And by comparison, Illinois, just for example, has a tax rate that's set between 26 and 41%, which obviously is a wide margin compared to New Jersey. And even up north in Massachusetts, they send around a 17%, with also giving the municipality an option of a 3% tax on top of that. So New Jersey will ultimately give the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, the CRC, the final say on what the tax rate is. And after the first 9 months of the industry up and running, they have the ability to impose additional taxes should they choose. But, New Jersey really gave the burgeoning industry the opportunity to, grow with a low tax rate and kind of move forward.
Sam, identifying what our neighboring states and northeastern states have done tax-wise is really important, because throughout the legislative process, we worked hard not only to keep our taxes in New Jersey low as it pertained to both the adult use and the medical use for cannabis. Our whole goal was to ensure that our businesses would be competitive in a regional marketplace, because as we've seen with other products and other economies of scale, we want to make sure that our neighboring states are not beating us out from the perspective of a tax structure, because every dollar for our businesses in New Jersey matters, especially when you're talking about creating this industry from the ground up.
Sam, as you just stated, the commission has met for the first time. What does this mean for the calendar going forward?
So the legislation was passed in February and signed by the governor. And on April 12th, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission was fully staffed and their commissioners were ready to, have their first meeting. At the organizational meeting, they transferred the power of the cannabis industry from the New Jersey Department of Health and transferred it to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Looking ahead, the commission is going to be working on rules and regulations. And there's a key date in August that, we're all looking for in the industry, and that's August 22nd. And by that date, the regulations are due by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, as well as any municipality in the state that is not open for business for the cannabis industry must opt out of the program. And if the municipality chooses to opt out, they have a 5-year period in which they, can review the industry and ultimately choose if they want to be a participant moving forward.
That's interesting, Sam. Are there any other thoughts on this?
I think one of the biggest things that the CRC is going to have to focus on is making sure that the medicinal patients have access and there's an adequate supply for the demand that is currently here with our medicinal patients, and making sure that they have what they need before we can even transition into an adult use market.
That's a very important point, because both the legislature as well as the governor's overall commitment was to ensure that medical marijuana patients were going to have the medicine they needed. So as the commission puts forward their regulations for the adult use marketplace, they're going to continue to follow that commitment to ensure the medical patients have what they need. When you put that all together, the reality is 6 to 8 months is the true timeline, we believe, before the first adult use sale will take place. That timeline can be sped up if the medical need is met and the commission allows for medical cannabis suppliers and retailers to provide an adult use product. So what we're looking at from Sam's perspective, if you're looking at August, mid-August, late August, we really could see something moving in adult use recreation really in the next 6 to 8 months, which is extremely exciting for all of us, because we've been at this for so long, as Regina pointed out from the beginning, when 2008, 2009, medical cannabis really came to the forefront in New Jersey.
So in closing, I'd like each of you to share your key insight into the future of cannabis in New Jersey.
The legislature and the governor provided entrepreneurs and the emerging cannabis industry with a whole host of options to enter the industry. The legislation and now law permitted and established 6 different license classes, ranging from a Class 5 retailer license to a Class 6 delivery license. So the industry will allow individuals and entrepreneurs to enter and seek to participate in the industry as best fits for them.
Thanks very much, Sam. So Regina, how do you see the future of cannabis for our state?
The license structure and the taxing is very important to this conversation. I think the key point that we should remember is that the focus of legalization was making it a social justice and a fair and equitable and accessible industry. And within the adult use cannabis law, there were provisions to make sure that New Jersey residents and those who had been most affected by the war on drugs were able to have a stake in the industry. There is a goal of 15% of all licenses to be allocated to minority-owned businesses, and then another 15% will go to women and veteran-owned businesses. 70% of all the tax revenue will go to fund social equity programs in impact zones, such as education, healthcare, and so forth. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission also has the option of levying an additional excise fee on cultivators, and 100% of that revenue would potentially go to social equity programs within impact zones. These are all reinvestment opportunities for communities of color that have bore the brunt on the failed war on cannabis. As the CRC begins to promulgate their regulations, we will get a clear picture of what the adult use industry will look like. Companies and individuals looking to apply for a license should be cognizant of making sure that their business reflects the diversity of our state and the communities they will operate in.
Thank you, Regina. Kevin, you get the final word.
The key takeaway is the future looks bright. It's such an exciting time in the state because it's not every day that you get to be a part of creating a new economy, an economy which is going to bring hundreds, if not thousands of jobs throughout the state in all different parts of the cannabis and adult use cannabis industry. Along with those jobs will come sales, and those sales brings revenue to all sectors of our government, local, county, and state. Why is that so important? Because as we come out of this pandemic, we have to continue to find new revenue lines. And we have to ensure that those dollars, as Regina stated earlier, go to the communities that deserve them, that need them, so that we can continue to move this economy into the future and build those jobs, those businesses in the places that need it most. So it's really an exciting time.
So Kevin, what's the basis for your optimism?
We saw in the pandemic where New Jersey succeeded and made decisions well before it needed to in the right manner. The best examples I can share with you are one, the internet gaming and online sports betting. The New Jersey legislature and governor fought hard, and they ensured that the tax rates were going to be low. And that low tax rate really allowed us to compete and win in that competition with our neighboring states. We've seen that now with where our tax rate is for adult use cannabis. As Sam stated, Illinois, Massachusetts, and our neighbors to the north in New York. We are in a great position to not only build a successful economy around adult use cannabis, but we really believe that our state is in the prime position to lead adult use cannabis for the Northeast and most likely the country. So it's an exciting time, Norris.
Well, that's a wrap for this edition of PPAG Perspectives. We'd like to thank you for joining us. And if you want more information on this topic, just go to ppag.com. And we hope you'll join us on the next edition of PPAG Perspectives.